Jeffrey Epstein was rich, ridiculously rich. Private jets, a private island, a $77 million mansion in Manhattan. And yet, when people tried to figure out how he actually made that money, no one could give a straight answer. He claimed to manage billions for the world's wealthiest people, except no one could find those clients. No public filings, no verified records, nothing. How did a college dropout go from teaching math to owning one of the biggest private fortunes on Wall Street? Because when you follow the paper trail, it turns out there isn't one. And yet somehow that made him untouchable. So today we're asking the question nobody seems able to answer. How did Jeffrey Epstein really make his money? Before the private jets and secret islands, Jeffrey Epstein was, believe it or not, a teacher. He taught math and physics at the Dalton School, an elite prep school in Manhattan. He didn't have a college degree. He wasn't even certified to teach. But somehow he got the job, and that somehow would define the rest of his life. While teaching, Epstein met the son of Alan Greenberg, the chief executive officer of Bear Stearns, one of the biggest investment banks in America. A few conversations later, Greenberg offered Epstein a job, just like that. No finance degree, no MBA, no experience, but he had something more valuable: charisma. People said Epstein had this strange charm. He could make rich people feel like they were the smartest person in the room, while secretly convincing them he was smarter. At Bear Stearns, he started as an assistant, but quickly rose through the ranks. He worked in options trading, risk arbitrage, the kind of complex financial stuff that sounds impressive even when nobody fully understands it. But then came the first red flag. In 1981, Epstein left Bear Stearns officially to start his own firm. Unofficially, there were whispers about insider trading and regulatory violations. Nothing was proven, but the timing was suspicious. Bear Stearns said he resigned. Others say he was pushed out before the SEC came knocking. And just like that, Epstein's Wall Street chapter ended. But his story was only getting started, because the next person he teamed up with ran one of the biggest Ponzi schemes in American history. After leaving Bear Stearns, Epstein didn't stay quiet for long. He found a new mentor, a man named Steven Hoffenberg, who ran a company called Towers Financial Corporation. On paper, Towers was a debt collection firm. In reality, it was a $460 million Ponzi scheme, and Hoffenberg later claimed that Epstein was the brains behind it. According to him, Epstein showed him how to manipulate investors, inflate returns, and keep the scam running for years. Now, here's where it gets strange. When Hoffenberg's empire collapsed, he went to prison for 20 years. But Epstein, he walked away untouched. Hoffenberg said he was shocked Epstein wasn't charged. In interviews years later, he called Epstein the architect. But Epstein denied everything. He said he barely knew Hoffenberg, even though witnesses said they worked side by side. So once again, Epstein somehow managed to be standing right next to a massive financial crime without getting any of it on him. And after Hoffenberg went to jail, Epstein rebranded himself. This time, not as a Wall Street trader or a partner in someone else's company, but as a financial advisor to billionaires. Except, as we'll see next, no one could ever find the billionaires. By the early 1990s, Jeffrey Epstein had reinvented himself. Again, this time he called himself a financial advisor. His company, J. Epstein & Company. And supposedly he only managed money for people worth over $1 billion. Sounds exclusive, right? Yet no one could actually find those clients. Epstein didn't publish reports. He didn't appear in investment circles. And no hedge fund, no trading desk, no one on Wall Street could confirm who he was managing money for. There was just one name that kept coming up. Les Wexner. Wexner was the founder of L Brands, the company behind Victoria's Secret and Abercrombie and Fitch. He was a real billionaire, and Epstein somehow became his financial gatekeeper. But it wasn't just business. Wexner gave Epstein power of attorney, meaning Epstein could sign checks, buy properties, and move money on Wexner's behalf. That's a level of trust you don't give your family, let alone your financial advisor. And then came the strangest part. Wexner owned a $77 million mansion in Manhattan, one of the largest private homes in the city. A few years later, it appeared under Epstein's name. No sale records, no market listing. Just poof, suddenly it was his. When asked about it later, Wexner called it a misunderstanding. But by then, Epstein had already moved in, and it became his main base of operations. He was living in one of the most expensive homes in America, and no one could explain where the money came from. So, who exactly was paying Jeffrey Epstein? The only confirmed long-term client was Les Wexner, but Epstein allegedly had relationships with other billionaires, like Leon Black, the co-founder of Apollo Global Management, and Glenn Dubin, a hedge fund manager. Here's the weird part. Leon Black reportedly paid Epstein over $150 million in consulting fees. For what? Tax advice, estate planning, managing a plane, handling a yacht? Nobody knows. Epstein wasn't a tax lawyer. He wasn't a hedge fund manager. He wasn't an accountant. Yet somehow he was getting paid hundreds of millions of dollars by people who had access to the best financial teams in the world. Glenn Dubin's story is similar. Epstein became entwined in his social circle, even allegedly acting as godfather to Dubin's kids. Then, Epstein started moving large sums of money, investing in funds run by Dubin's proteges, and somehow turning social connections into financial influence. It's almost like Epstein's real product wasn't investment advice, it was access. Access to Wexner, access to Black, access to Dubin, and access to secrets that could be useful, maybe even dangerous to powerful people. And while all this was happening, Epstein was quietly building a lifestyle that made him look like a billionaire, even though the paper trail of his wealth was murky at best. Private jets, luxury cars, 2 private islands, all bought with money that could not be fully explained. By the 2000s, Jeffrey Epstein wasn't just a mysterious financier, he was a man with power. He had friends in every corner of the elite, presidents, princes, scientists, executives, celebrities. And he reportedly had cameras set up in his Manhattan townhouse in guest bedrooms and bathrooms. Some reports suggest he may have used that footage to collect information. Blackmail? Leverage? It's unclear, but the potential was there, which might explain why Epstein could operate in financial circles for decades, even when the numbers didn't add up. In 2007, he was arrested in Florida for sex crimes. But instead of facing serious federal charges, he negotiated a non-prosecution agreement, kept secret from his victims, and served just 13 months with work release privileges. Think about that. A man accused of sexually exploiting minors with millions in assets walks away with almost nothing. And yet, even after his conviction, his relationships with billionaires like Leon Black continued. Black reportedly paid Epstein hundreds of millions afterward, allegedly for advice, despite the public knowledge of Epstein's crimes. It's almost like his network was more valuable than his bank account. The money followed his ability to connect people, influence decisions, and potentially hold secrets over powerful figures. In other words, Epstein's fortune might not have been purely financial. It was part finance, part social engineering, part strategic leverage. So when you ask, how did Epstein make his money? The answer is complicated, because maybe the money isn't the whole story. Maybe the real currency was power. Jeffrey Epstein died in 2019, but his fortune? That didn't disappear. It just got complicated. 2 days before his death, Epstein transferred everything, properties, cash, investments, into something called the 1953 Trust. This was a legal shell designed to hide beneficiaries and distribution. Some of that money has gone to victims through a compensation fund, over $164 million, funded in part by selling the islands, the Manhattan mansion, and his planes. But the rest? Likely benefiting a very small private circle. Documents show the trust forgave personal loans worth millions, including loans tied to people still connected to Epstein. The estate's reported assets fluctuate. At one point, under $40 million after claims, later boosted to over $130 million with a tax refund. And that's not even counting Epstein's investment in Peter Thiel's fintech fund, estimated at $170 million and his largest remaining asset. So the mystery continues. Even after death, Epstein's financial empire is hidden behind layers of legal structures. The truth about how he got wealthy and where all the money went remains murky. So, after decades of scrutiny, investigations, and lawsuits, here's what we actually know. Epstein had one confirmed billionaire client, Les Wexner. He lived a life of unimaginable luxury with a fortune estimated between $560 million and $600 million. He had a network of powerful friends, access to elite circles, and potentially sensitive information on them. Despite involvement in financial schemes and criminal activity, he largely avoided legal consequences for decades. And here's what we don't know: how he actually made most of his money, how many other clients he had or what they paid him for, how much of his wealth came from legitimate financial deals versus leveraging his social network, influence, or possibly illegal activity, whether the conspiracy theories about blackmail and secrets are true or just filling the gaps left by missing facts. What Epstein's story shows is chilling. Power, access, and secrecy can sometimes be far more valuable than any bank account. And even in today's era of media scrutiny, some financial mysteries remain unsolved because the system protects people who know how to hide in plain sight. Jeffrey Epstein may be gone, but the questions about his fortune, his network, and his influence, they're not going anywhere.